Friend, enemy, or frenemy? How do Indians view the rise of China and its implications for India's rise? Join the conversation on this important topic by taking the China Challenge survey. The survey has been put together by researchers at the Takshashila institution. Answer our 10 simple questions and let your voice be heard in shaping India's policy towards China. For more details, log on to www.takshashila.org.in or you can click on the link and take the survey in the show notes. Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
There is no doubting that the fall of Shaikh Hasina's democratically elected government in Bangladesh poses both a strategic as well as a diplomatic challenge to India. As my colleague and friend Yusuf Unjhawala puts it, this crisis underscores the delicate interplay of regional politics, international interests, and the implications for India's own strategic interests. Prime Minister Hasina was in charge of Bangladesh for 15 years, and what began as a student-led agitation soon turned out to be a regime change situation in Dhaka in a matter of weeks. Sheikh Hasina's administration responded with crackdowns leading to significant loss of life and intensification of the unrest. The upheaval revealed the vulnerabilities of Hasina's long-standing rule. Despite her firm control over the government, she failed to gauge the depth of discontent simmering beneath the surface. Now, what are the implications for India in a neighborhood full of internal strife? Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Myanmar all have their own crises to look after. And in the middle of all this, we have an India that has to look closely not only at what is happening, but also gauge China's interests. Hi, my name is Sachin Kalbag, and I work at the Takshashila institution. Today, I have with me my colleague Yusuf Unjhawala, a scholar at the Takshashila institution. Yusuf, welcome to the episode of All Things Policy.
Thanks, Sachin. Great to be back. Once in the 3-month thing that you, as you put it.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. In times of crisis, one remembers one's friends. So here we are. But first things first, Yusuf, what is your assessment of India's response and reaction to the Bangladesh crisis?
I think we've responded in a very measured manner. The first thing that we did was provided refuge to Sheikh Hasina once the army asked her to leave. I mean, that's what it is. The whole thing ultimately was done by the army when it asked her to leave, and a safe passage was provided. So that was a good thing done by the army, where they provided a safe passage for her to come to India, because we don't know how it would all have panned out if say the then prime minister, the former prime minister, was in her residence, and the mob, which later on invaded, kind of got into the PM's bungalow and ransacked it. If Sheikh Hasina was there, maybe she would have met with a very violent end, and that would have had much worse ramifications for Bangladesh. So that way the army played a very smart role in allowing her to move to India, and obviously India was perhaps in the loop in this regard, and then it was facilitated, for her to reach Delhi. So this was India's first kind of move to just protect an old ally from meeting a violent end. And secondly, we did come out with a statement which was presented by the External Affairs Minister in Parliament. And in that regard, there are two things which I kind of thought was a takeaway. One, we saw her presence in India as something which is temporary, not permanent, till she finds refuge somewhere else. We don't want her, it seems like that, we don't want her over here forever, although she's a great friend of ours, but we're not going to ask her to leave, but would kind of prefer her to find a different place and move over there. And, because that has kind of implications. There is a new dispensation in place, albeit right now in a caretaker role, but eventually there'll be some election held, and and it's very likely, the opposition, which is the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, the BNP, may come to power, and they don't have we don't have a great history with that party. That's the reason why we supported Hasina in the first place for all these years. Um, so if they come to the to power, even now with the caretaker government, if they decide to open up cases against Hasina and then demand an extradition, it will put us in a tight spot. And if we were to kind of extradite her, then it will not go down well with some of our other friends in the region, who are well inclined towards India. They would kind of see, as a dumping of a friend, and they would kind of, reassess how they see India as a reliable friend to be pro-India for. So, that will have an implication. The second thing that I thought about was, from the External Affairs Minister's statement, was that we kind of hinted that it was a mess up by Sheikh Hasina. The External Affairs Minister said that certain steps exacerbated the situation, which kind of hints that this was not handled well by Sheikh Hasina, and that led to her downfall. So these are the two things that came out from his statement, and this is the overall reaction as far as India is concerned in terms of providing refuge, which was a very symbolic act that we're going to stand by friends, and that's what we did. And secondly, it's going to be a temporary thing. That's a signal we have sent out that we're not looking her to be here forever. That's a signal to Bangladesh. It's a signal to even Sheikh Hasina that you're welcome here for now, but you'll have to find a permanent place somewhere else.
True. Also, I think there are, like you pointed out in your op-ed in the Hindustan Times and the other op-ed that you're writing, there are several challenges before India when it comes to the Bangladesh situation. Of course, the initial challenge was how to handle Sheikh Hasina's flight, her escape flight, and then, of course, looking at the larger situation. In your op-ed, you've enumerated those and expanded on those thoughts. Could you elaborate on what those immediate concerns for India are, and what should India do to address those in the short to middle term?
I think the very immediate concern is the humanitarian situation over there. As the riots, or the protests started, it not only became from a protest against the quota, it became a protest against the government, and somehow it then morphed into an anti-minority, which is basically anti-Hindu riots and kind of mass violence against them. I think I read a report where it at that time, I think sometime last week, I think it was in the Hindu or something, which kind of chronicled about 205 incidents of targeted violence against Hindus in Bangladesh. So I think that is a very situation which has great implications, not only for Bangladesh but also for India, for two reasons. One is large scale violence over there is will spill over into India in terms of refugees, and given the kind of polarization that we see in India, it could lead to some kind of instability over here, especially in the border areas. And so this is a very important challenge for us right now. This is immediate. This is right now. I think we will have to handle this.
Yeah, just to pick your brains on that, Yusuf, a couple of people that I was speaking to in Delhi were mentioning that the Bangladesh situation could lead to some kind of, perhaps lead to some kind of retaliatory, attacks here in India against Muslims, just because there are supporters of, obviously, India needs to support the Hindu population there. But do you see that those spillovers that you talk about in the border areas could happen to other states as well in India if it's not handled well?
But speculative, but yeah, I mean, those are the fears, right? Because over the last few years, we've seen this hardening of stances. So it can be a fear. And the other thing that can happen is, there can be calls for intervention in Bangladesh. In 1971, we did that when there was large scale refugee influx into India. And this time, because of the violence against Hindus and the Hindus migrating over here, and if with social media, you get all kinds of imagery coming out. Some can be true, but along with that, there can be all kinds of fake news, disinformation, vested interest trying to fuel fires and things like that. So it can take a very serious and very ugly turn, and that could lead to some calls. And if there is actually something happening over there, it could lead to calls for India's intervention over there. So that would kind of change the whole complexity of what we're seeing right now. So it is very important for the Bangladeshi caretaker government to you know, make sure this violence stops. Even India's opposition is coming out quite vocally. I think I read a comment by Sashi Tharoor where he has lamented what's happening over there. I mean, the day the government fell of Sheikh Hasina, they vandalized the statue of Sheikh Mujib. I mean, that's the father of their nation, and
Yes.
that's how the turn has taken. And we know who's against the father of the nation, right? There are certain parties. There are certain parties in Bangladesh who are against that, and they were pro-Pakistan when the War of Independence was fought by the Bangladeshis in 1971. So these bring in many different dynamics which India has to handle, because India, well, we have no choice. We have to handle that. But violence against Hindus in Bangladesh is going to be it can lead to very serious outcomes. It has to stop. That's our immediate thing.
What are the other concerns? There are a couple of other things that you wrote about. One is obviously India needs to understand China's stake in that region, not just Bangladesh, but also in the larger South Asian region, including Myanmar and Bhutan. And we know that China has shown interest in all those in those areas. But now that Bangladesh is seemingly, quote unquote, seemingly unstable, even though there is a strong caretaker government with the backing of the military. Do you think that China's role here needs to be watched very, very carefully by India? And if there is any kind of movement from China to look at Bangladesh in some manner, then what are the possible ways that China could influence the decision making in Bangladesh, and what can India do to make that or counter that?
So at the moment, with Mr. Mohammad Yunus in charge, he's kind of seen as someone pro-West, quote unquote, right? So I think for the moment, in that aspect, we may have a bit of a breather, because the true kind of really anti-India parties are not in charge right now. Although Yunus has, issued a statement where he said he's hurt with India and he'll never forgive that. But maybe he'll not go to an extent to be, really anti-India. So I think till the time elections happen, I think we have a bit of a breather and we can work things out. I think reach out to all parties over there, including the BNP, and make sure that we convey our concerns, and there are even red lines drawn as to what is unacceptable to us. Having said that, the Chinese investments in Bangladesh are big. Here's the thing, Sheikh Hasina, although she was India friendly, she was balancing that with her relations with China. I mean, even in July when the protest was on, she went to China and they elevated their bilateral relations into a comprehensive strategic partnership. China has invested over $25 billion in the last 8-10 years in Bangladesh. China is helping build a naval facility in Bangladesh, and it's a very big one where it can house multiple submarines and warships. China operates two Chinese supplied submarines. It operates frigates supplied by China. So, and also Bangladesh is China's second largest defense market. So this is where it is, right? So although India is Bangladesh's largest trading partner, we have good ties. Till the Sheikh Hasina government was there, even at the government to government level, very good ties. But the fact is, Chinese influence in Bangladesh is going to grow once you have a party which is not well inclined towards India. And this has been the history. So if we look at the BNP and the Jamaat, they are pro-China, they are pro-Pakistan, anti-India. Now here's the thing. China was very well behind Hasina all this while. Even in January when she won the election, China welcomed them, although they will say, we don't interfere and the people of Bangladesh can choose whoever. But they backed Hasina because she was winning elections. So they did business with her. Similar as India, we did business with her because we were, it suited us because she went after all the loonies over there and put a lid to the anti-India activities that were happening. So both India and China backed Hasina, but now when the new dispensation comes, say after election, where BNP and Jamatis get going, they are anti-India and pro-China. So they will not kind of hold China's backing of Hasina against it, and they will work with him. And this is where India is at a disadvantage. So, like I said, India will have to watch very carefully. Is it all a lost cause for us? I don't think so. I mean, I don't think even the Bangladeshis would kind of go nuclear against India. But we'll have to watch because even the Pakistanis will get involved. They will try to reestablish their old networks, which was destroyed by Hasina. And the Jamatis are pro-Pakistan. They are with the ISI. And this can have we have a situation in the northeast. We have old insurgencies, and plus we have a situation in Manipur. We don't know what all these Pakistanis can do using their new people in government in Bangladesh if they are well inclined towards Pakistan. So these are the challenges that we will face. So as I see, the three things are that the BNP with the Jamatis coming back to power whenever the elections are held, the Chinese getting greater influence, and most importantly, the humanitarian situation. If the violence against Hindus really escalates, then it's going to be big trouble.
One of the major developments that happened immediately after Hasina's ouster was the fact that student leaders themselves came forward and they said that we want Mohammad Yunus as the chief of the caretaker government. And the military backed it. So clearly there was, behind the scenes parleys that may have been going on between the agitators and the military and to arrive at a consensus candidate. But the fact that Mohammad Yunus has been put in charge gives some bit of hope to India, given that, Yunus, Professor Yunus or Dr. Yunus, however you may call him, has been looked at favorably by the Americans. And, the fact that an economist is in charge gives hope that there will be some kind of development agenda that the government will be looking at over the next few months.
First things first, this is not a democratic government. It is a caretaker government. It is not an elected government. So I don't know how long this arrangement will be in power, because ultimately you don't want unelected people over there. So let us be very clear. This is not a democratic government. You may call the agitation as democratic, uprising or whatever, but this is not an elected government. So elections have to happen. So the first question is, are the Bangladeshis working on a roadmap towards democracy? Second, are they going to do things that happened in Pakistan, for example, where Imran Khan was taken out, put in jail and things, and then his party was barred, and all of those people then fought as independent and still won, but his party was barred. So are we going to see some kind of retributive action against Sheikh Hasina where she is barred from elections for life? Secondly, what about the Awami League? Are they also going to be kept out of the electoral process? That is going to be, trouble if they do. Also, India has to back Awami League. We cannot kind of appear to ditch them. They are the largest, even now they're the largest party. They have a lot of influence. And, we have to be mindful of any kind of retribution against their leaders and the cadre over there. So there are a lot of these challenges that we have to be mindful about, and we cannot allow that to happen. Violence in Bangladesh has to stop. All kinds of violence, be it against minorities, be it political violence, it has to stop. Having said that, in the interim, say maybe this arrangement lasts for the next 6 months, say the election has to be called within 6 months. I don't think Bangladesh is going to turn around in 6 months as far as economy goes. We don't know if Mr. Yunus will contest elections. He had tried 15 years ago and then he withdrew because he did not have that kind of popularity. So suddenly he's found acceptance with the students, but electorally, can he win elections? I don't know. I don't think so. And even he has said he's not inclined to contest elections. So ultimately, it's going to be the political parties who are going to contest. So I think the next 6 months are going to be very interesting. And the next few months are also kind of going to give shape to how India-Bangladesh relations will be in the future. And I think there has to be good diplomacy. There has to be a lot of understanding from India and as well as the Bangladeshi side. I don't think even they can afford to kind of, like I said, go all nuclear against India.
One of the possibilities, if there are elections, is that the BNP Jamaat coalition may come to power. This is one of the possibilities that is being,
I think it's a very real possibility.
Yeah.
I think they will win because, we don't know what kind of mechanisms will be in place to make sure the Awami League. So what if there are free and fair elections and the Awami League wins if they're allowed to contest? Then what? I mean, so that possibly cannot be ruled out as well.
Right.
So what can happen is then kind of then what happened earlier, where you don't have free and fair elections and make sure and the guys make sure who they want to win will win. So the BNP and Jamaat come to power, and that's a very real possibility. Yes.
But there are two implications. One is the impact on domestic policy in Bangladesh, which will alter completely from what Sheikh Hasina has been propounding for the last many years. And the other thing is the immediate implication for India, because foreign policy will completely change if and when the BNP Jamaat coalition comes to power. Because then, given the fact that they are pro Chinese, pro Pakistani, and anti India, then India will have to deal with quote unquote inimical parties on the other side, which means that the challenges in Delhi will kind of multiply many times, and the whole implications not only in terms of economic activity. The other implication is, of course, the rush of refugees to our border regions and border states. In which case, we'll have a double problem on our hands. One is we won't know how to deal with the anti-India sentiment in Bangladesh, and we'll have hundreds and thousands of refugees lining up to come to India.
Yes, like I said earlier, I mean, one is there are two aspects right over here. First is the violence against minorities, which is Hindus, and the secondly, if the situation in Bangladesh deteriorates, where there is further economic hardship and there is just general violence and people don't see hope in Bangladesh, then even a lot of other general Bangladeshis, not the minorities, but even the other Muslims might try to then migrate into India, and that's not acceptable to us. It's going to be a trouble for us. So yes, that is a major concern. Like I said earlier, there are three possibilities right now. One is the BNP coming to power, them having a very pronounced pro-China, pro-Pakistan, anti-India kind of a stand, or maybe they might just change from the past and they think more in terms of Bangladesh's own destiny, in terms of their economic growth, which they were growing right for the last 15 years. They had very robust economic growth under Sheikh Hasina. They were exporting a lot. Their per capita income has jumped to over $2,000. They're much better off than the Pakistanis. So will BNP then recognize that they cannot antagonize India? India is their largest trading partner. We supply a lot of material to them. India has a lot of investments in Bangladesh. There are a lot of Indian textile companies where India's textile exports dropped and Bangladesh is increased. There are a lot of Indian companies who invested in Bangladesh, providing employment over there and exporting it to both India and as well as the world. And the Bangladeshis have benefited. They have gained prosperity. So can Bangladeshis then afford to kind of tick off India altogether? And we'll hope that, ultimately they would be mindful of their own country's interest and be mindful of that fact and not antagonize India.
In which case, the trust that Mohammad Yunus has over the next 3 to 6 months is extremely important for Bangladesh's current administration, caretaker administration, and of course, how things are looked at as and when the elections are announced. Do you think that Mohammad Yunus has the trust and the belief, the belief amongst the people for taking care of Bangladesh over the next 3 to 6 months and ensure that free and fair elections are being held whenever they are announced?
I think that's a very difficult question, right? I mean, we'll only know if he contests elections, but maybe this was a kind of a compromise solution, kind of find a face which can run a caretaker government, not a government, but just a caretaker government which can hold elections. And the army's role is very important over here. This would not have happened without the army, making its moves, first getting Hasina out, and then, ensuring that, Mr. Yunus came and took charge. I mean, earlier there was talk that he was reluctant and then he was convinced and things like that. So, I don't think, he has a wide appeal because, say, for instance, if we assume that, there are two parties, one is a BNP and one is the Awami League, even if there is a kind of a 60-40 split at the moment, or even a 70-30 split. Where does Mr. Yunus stand at the moment? We don't know unless he contests elections. And he said he's not going to contest elections. So right now he's just an acceptable face, someone who is, an educated, an economist, not a political person, that kind of a thing, which who will just ensure that, democracy is restored in Bangladesh. And this arrangement cannot last forever. So I think very soon they'll have to kind of announce a roadmap, say within the next 6 months they're going to hold election or something like that. Because if that does not happen, then you will start to hear murmurs, and there will be some understanding that this is not an elected government. And no matter how popular he may be as a person, but as a governor, I don't think the people will accept him for too long.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's an important point because given the instability in that country, even a little spark may ignite something really big. And then if the military intervenes or, sides with the BNP Jamaat coalition, then things may, turn out to be a completely different scenario than what we had envisaged. But I want to talk a little bit about
It's very, very interesting. You know what? The army is not with the BNP because with 15 years of Awami League rule, most of the military officers are probably inclined towards the Awami League.
okay.
So yeah,
But I also want to talk about, you mentioned in one of your previous responses that the fact that Mohammed Yunus is a pro-West figure is kind of a breather for India. It's
yeah.
important that he's looked upon as a person with liberal ideas, or a person who looks upon who's looked upon by the West as a respected figure in Bangladesh. And given that he's won the Nobel Prize in economics, or Nobel Prize rather, gives him a certain bit of heft, moral or otherwise, in administering the country. But there have been some, quote unquote, conspiracy theories about the American involvement in pushing the Muhammad Yunus name. One, two, maybe Hasina's proximity to China was not looked upon by the Americans as a favorable situation for Washington. Do you think that this is reflected in the actual happenings on the ground in Dhaka? And do you think that the Americans might be involved in a much greater degree going forward?
I don't think the Americans had any role in the ouster of Sheikh Hasina. I think the only person who was responsible for her ouster was Sheikh Hasina herself. I mean, even the Indian External Affairs Minister alluded to that when he said in Parliament that things were done which were not right, and that led to one thing led to the other. I mean, you had some 300 or 400 people shot dead. It's not acceptable, and that is what caused. I mean, it was badly handled by her, and because probably she had developed all these autocratic tendencies, as people say it, right? For 15 years in power, and uh, you know, jailing the opposition, running elections, you know, the last election was only 40% turnout with the BNP boycotting it, and the leader is in jail. She was released subsequently after Hasina's exit. So we may not like BNP. We were very comfortable with Hasina, but the thing is, the people of Bangladesh had their say, in which we have no say. India does not have a say in what the people of Bangladesh choose. For the while it lasted, We'll have to now work out with whoever is there. And I think this next 6 months, because of a figure who we think will be reasonable, kind of gives us that breathing space. It's not like an immediate. First thing, what has happened is there is no immediate anarchy. There's no anarchy, which would have great implications for us. Today you would see Bangladesh was burning, and there's violence against Hindus and other minorities, and they're all killing each other. Awami League against the BNP, and all the cadres are fighting each other at each other's throats, and all that's spilling over into our side, and there is a huge influx of refugees. All that has not happened, so that's a good thing, and that I think the credit over there goes to the army, which made sure Hasina's exit, and then made sure things didn't go out of hand. So we have 6 months or 8 months or whatever. I don't know what the roadmap the Bangladesh is going to cite, but that kind of gives us a breathing space where we can speak with Mohammed Yunus, we can speak with the army. You have to remember that Indian army and the Bangladesh army have good ties. Bangladeshi officers come to India to our staff colleges. So those kind of ties do exist. So we'd have that breathing space. I think we will have to reach out to BNP It's not that we haven't in the past. It's just that it didn't work out. Even in, under the previous administration of Dr. Manmohan Singh, we reached out to Khalida Zia. Interestingly, after the land boundary agreement was signed between India and Bangladesh in 2015, Khalida Zia actually welcomed the agreement. Says it is probably the greatest day in Bangladesh history since the independence. And she thanked the Prime Minister Modi. She thanked the previous Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, even Sonia Gandhi, and things like that. So we don't know. We'll hope that there would be sense in the opposition that there's a BNP. Now the Jamaat is going to be a completely different entity altogether. So will they have a coalition again, or will the BNP just sweep to power without the need of any Jamaatis in the government? We don't know how it play out, but I think we'll have to start to talk to all the stakeholders over there.
With that, we come to the end of this episode. Thank you so much, Yusuf. We run out of time, but a very illuminating and enlightening discussion. Thank you so much. And I hope to see
My
you
pleasure,
soon
Sachin.
in the next episode of All Things Policy.
My pleasure, Sachin, as always, and hopefully this time will not be 3 months.
Yes, we'll meet. We'll meet more often. Thank you so much.
Done. All right, take care, Sachin. Bye.
Take care.
If you liked our show, dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs. Check us out at our Twitter handle @TakshashilaINST or our website takshashila.org.in.